The whole point of this channel is to play devil's advocate, putting a positive spin on things that are typically seen as bad, for now focusing on One Piece. So, I thought it was about time to tackle the things that I think are bad about the One Piece story. The two things that come to mind for me are Shanks' arm and Pell's surviving. This video is obviously about Shanks' arm, and I'll be covering Pell's survival the week after next. I actually think I found a reason that makes sense for Shanks to give up his arm, and it's kinda hilarious. But first, let's go over the narrative benefits of the lost arm and the reason it's even an issue in the first place. There is no way that the Lord of the Coast was able to take Shanks unawares and bite off his arm. Let's just get that out of the way immediately. Shanks could have just dealt with it from the shore before going and saving Luffy from drowning. He could have shattered its teeth on his arm. He would have seen it coming before he even did anything and could have easily adjusted his plan accordingly. Some people think that he may have been weaker back then because that was 6 years before he became a Yonko, so maybe he could have lost an arm like that if focused on Luffy. That doesn't make sense though. Shanks used to duel Mihawk before he lost the arm. And when Mihawk went to talk to Shanks about Luffy, Shanks immediately asked if he came to settle the score, implying that Shanks was ahead in the number of duels won. I mean, he had just taken out a world government ship guarded by CP9 agents, one of whom, or who, was allegedly on Lucci's level, all without anyone on his crew showing any sign of injury. And there's a decent chance that he was strong enough to learn Kamisari before Roger was even executed. The other main reason I see people give is the reason he gave to Whitebeard. He betted on the future. That's a super impactful line and it sounds deep, but it kinda dissolves when you ask why. Luffy being saved from the bandits would have been enough to inspire him to chase after Shanks. The thing he really bet on the future was the hat. That's all he needed to bet. The reason I always grumpily settled with was that it was either that Oda didn't expect this much power creep because it was expected to be a much shorter series, or that an editor told them to make Shanks lose an arm to make the first chapter more impactful. Mangaka don't really have that much power when it comes to chapter 1, let's be honest. Now let's get into the reason that it's not bad for it to have happened in terms of the story. First of all, if it really was the editor telling him to, the alternative might have been for Oda to keep his integrity, great, and for us to have never gotten the series. Not so great. Similarly, you have to admit that losing the arm absolutely made that more impactful to readers, especially on their first time reading through. It is entirely possible that the series could have done much worse or even completely flopped. Oda is a slow-building author. In my opinion, this story is one of the, if not the greatest pieces of fiction of all time. But you need to have an audience for them to experience that slow build. And the impact of Shanks losing the arm to save Luffy in chapter 1 got people invested, whether you like it or not. Maybe it wasn't so much of Shanks betting his arm on the future generation, as it was Oda betting the arm on the future of the series. If there isn't really a reason, does it make sense for him to lose the arm? No. But that's better than not having a series for something to not make sense in. Each of the original Yonko also represent something. Whitebeard symbolizes family and old guy. Just kidding. He represents the ending of an age. That even with the power all three of the other Yonko represent, nothing but Kureha is forever. Big Mom represents the overwhelming power of the Devil Fruits. Kaido represents brute strength and durability. Shanks represents the power of Haki. And maybe that's why Haki was never really revealed until the time skip, basically. Without losing an arm, he may have focused on his swordsmanship rather than try to compensate for the lost arm in other ways, which ultimately may have ended up making him much stronger than he would have been had he kept both arms. He likely would have instead represented technique or something, which would be fine, but I think Haki is cooler and I don't want Kaido to be the Haki man. Speaking of Shanks shifting his focus from swordsmanship though, the last huge reason the lost arm is a good thing should make Mihawk fans rejoice. Mihawk would be practically irrelevant if Shanks hadn't lost his arm. Shanks is a swordsman. Shanks and Mihawk used to duel, with the implication being that Shanks had more wins, as I mentioned before. Therefore, Shanks would almost certainly still have the title of being the greatest swordsman. Mihawk is so important to the story now because he holds the title of the greatest swordsman. And it's Zoro's goal to surpass him to take that title. If Shanks had both arms, Mihawk would just be a stepping stone for Zoro on the way to surpass Shanks, if he was even in the story at all. Hopefully, we can all agree now that the story did benefit from Shanks losing the arm. Now, if only there were an actual in-world reason that made sense for him to lose it. There is no way he lost it accidentally, and what reason could there possibly be to willingly lose an arm? I've already established that I don't like the I bet it on the future reasoning, at least not on its own. But here's the thing, Shanks never cared about being the greatest swordsman. He also seems to really enjoy just partying and chilling out. Maybe it was just so Mihawk, and others, let's be fair, would stop challenging him. The two of them seem to be all buddy-buddy. Shanks may have just told him countless times that he could have the title if he wanted. But Mihawk's pride would never allow that. But if Shanks came around and, "Oh no, Mihawk, look, I lost an arm. I guess you're the strongest swordsman now." Mihawk never challenged him after that because it's really a lose-lose situation for him. If he wins, great. He's a better swordsman than a one-armed guy, and he could just get the title anyways. But if he loses, or if it's even close, that's even worse than being beaten by an opponent with a hand tied behind their back. Yes, it is funny at first thought to think that Shanks basically may have chopped off his arm because Mihawk kept bugging him about duels, but it kinda makes even more sense the more you think about it. What did Mihawk do when he gained the title? He pretty quickly got tired of people challenging him, so he gave up being the Marine Hunter and instead bowed to the Marines so he could get the title of a Shichibukai and be left alone. He still cares about the title, and especially having lost his goal himself with Shanks, he wants someone else to surpass him properly, so he wouldn't sacrifice his own arm the way Shanks did. But he was tired enough of the constant challenges that he swallowed his pride to filter out the weak opponents. Shanks, on the other hand, seems to have a history with the world government, and because he didn't even care about the title in the first place, sacrificing an arm may have been a better way out in his opinion. Shing shing shing! The internet, and let's be honest, the world, is founded on hatred and vitriol, so I'm sure there's an endless supply of topics for me to put a positive spin on. But it would be nice if you could help me with some ideas. I'm sure you've got plenty.